So we saw how the mom kept correcting her child implicitly. So the child recognizes that we have to make the verb in the past because the action has already happened. Okay, so Chomsky distinguishes between the two types of universals within the universal grammar, I mean. The first one, which is formal universals. And the formal universals include fixed linguistic elements such as the phonetic features, the formal universals is the abstract principles that restrict the form of grammatical rules. So, for example, constraints on the word order or the question form. So, for example, she is playing. When the child wants to make this as a question, they are going to take the is and put it at the beginning. Is the child playing? And use this form when he or she wants to ask. While substantive universal is fixed linguistic elements such as the phonetic features and syntactic categories. So, for example, each language have a noun, verb, subject, object, etc. So here it's related to the structures of the sentences, questions, negative forms, and here is related to the parts of the syntactic categories and the phonetic features that is existed in any language. So together these universals limit the number of possible grammar, making language acquisition easier. Let's move to talk about the parameters and the role of input. So the environment for Noam Chomsky is the source for grammar from scratch. So universal grammar doesn't give learners ready-made rules. Instead, it provides parameters, which are the optional that must be set based on the linguistic input. So for example, a language may allow or disallow subject omission. So the child sets his parameter based on the language they hear. This means that the environment plays an important role, but not by creating grammar from scratch. Rather, the input helps the learner choose among the options already allowed. So the grammar of the language consists of two parts: the core grammar and the periphery one. When it comes to the core grammar, it includes the rules that are determined by the universal grammar. These rules are universal, simple, and unmarked. And we are going to talk about unmarked later. While periphery, they are the rules that are not determined by the universal grammar. These includes the irregular forms of the verbs or the irregular forms of the plural forms, the historical remain and the borrowed structures from other languages. So peripheral rules must be learned individually and often behave exceptionally. So it depends on the individual differences. Markedness and the scale of markedness for Noam Chomsky. Closely related to this distinction is that the concept of markedness. Unmarked rules are simple, frequent, it happens, and natural. They belong to the core grammar and are usually acquired early. Whereas the marked rules, they are the complex rules, the ones which happen rarely in everyday life, and they are exceptional. So for example, apple, apples, banana, bananas, uh, woman, women, man, men. So there are some exceptions. That's why when you ask a child to make the noun man plural, he or she sometimes apply the rule of generalizability and says that man, mans instead of men. So this is somehow kind of complex rule for the children. So markedness exists on the continuum, meaning some rules are more marked than the others. Let's now move to talk about the topological universals, which is by Joseph Greenberg. So typological universals are also classified into three types: substantive, formal, implicational. Substantive universal, we can simply define it as the basic inherent features of the language. So for example, the phonetic or syntactic categories found in a certain language. While the formal universals, they are more abstract and they are dealing with, the possible ways that language can organize their grammar. Implicational universals, so if a language has one priority, it will also have the other. When it comes to the implicational universals, this means that we have to examine its types. So it has two types: cluster and hierarchical or hierarchies. So cluster universal, when one property imply the other, just like when almost all languages has verb, subject, object, the parts of speech, for example. While the hierarchical universals, when the presence of one feature of the language implies the presence of the other. So this is what we have regarding the types of Greenberg the type of Greenberg to the universals. Now let's move to talk about the absolute universals versus tendencies universals. So the absolute, which is explains the rules that have no exceptions. It is the opposite of tendencies, which is statistically strong patterns with some exceptions, as we said, the plural rule, for example. Moving to talk about the explanation for the topological universal. So unlike Chomsky, the topologists or Greenberg do not assume a single explanation for universal. Possible explanations include innate language principles. They believe that there is an innate linguistic principles, a common historical origins of the languages, and a communicative and cognitive pressures. So this is simply means that Greenberg has explained that there is an innate linguistic principles, and also this go back to the origins of languages and the existence of a communicative and cognitive presence. So it looks at the universal grammar or the innateness ability as a cognitive process which develops over time. Let's move to talk about the relationship between what we are saying about the typological and the universal grammar. Noam Chomsky, Greenberg, and their followers of the scholars. The most interesting thing is how we can link these ideas into practice. So the relation of the universal grammar or UG to second language acquisition is that the teachers and curriculum designers should put in their consideration, especially because we are living in a country where English is taught as a foreign language, so that there are unmarked structures and there are marked structures. There are structures which is easier to acquire and ones which is harder for the foreign language speakers. So we expect them to acquire the rules in a different levels, and the unmarked structures before the marked ones, and the influence of L1 is stronger when L1 and L2 are unmarked features or share unmarked features, so they can easily recognize the rules because they are already familiar with it. Also, the typological universals helps us to protect acquisition order and difficulty. Here we reach the end of our lecture, and I want to tell you that I'll be more than happy for you to answer all your questions. If you have any question, you can put it down and I will answer it inshallah. Thank you for your time and for your watching.